हेलो एवरीवन, कैसे हैं आप सब। वेलकम बैक टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल SAS with Vikas. Let's start our session. As we discussed in the last lesson, we had already discussed like data creation with various using input and cards methods. So in today's lecture we will cover that data creation with the various input and inputs methods. So there are various input methods. We will see that list input methods, column input methods, formatted input method, and named input method. So these four we will discuss today. And I believe before moving forward with the data creation and with data creation with various methods, we need to know what is data and what are the types of data also, and what is data in the SAS also we will discuss all things. And we will also see that data variable attributes, what are the variable attributes, because we are going to create the variable, we are going to create the data. So for that we need to know the attributes also. So see with the let's understand or learn this all with example. We have one example. I had created this data exp1, and I'm calling this data from the sasf library of class datasets. And I'm running this one for understanding a bit the all thing like what is data and what are the types of data and what is SAS data all thing. So we can see here like this anything which consist in the rows and the column. You can see here like we have total 19 rows and the 5 column. So anything which consist in the rows and column, that is the data. In general, you can understand this thing like anything which consist rows and column is known as data. And then what are the types of data? There are two basic types of the data, that is the structured and unstructured. The structured data types is one, those have defined column name. Those have defined column name. That is the structure. Let's take an example that SAS dataset is also a structured dataset. Other also Excel also you can take example of that as structured dataset. Apart from that, unstructured dataset is those who don't have the defined column name. Let's take an example of the word format, that is that variable or column name is not defined. That's why that is known as unstructured dataset. And now we are moving understand for the SAS table or SAS dataset. What is SAS dataset? Again, having the SAS dataset which contain the rows and column, or in general in the SAS language you can say that variable and observation. Anything which consists in the which consist variable and observation is known as SAS dataset or SAS table. SAS table contains two major portions, that is the data portion and description portion. This thing like variable is known as description portion, and this all apart from the variable what are the observation is known as the data portion. As we know the defined column in the SAS table also, that's why SAS table is known as structured dataset. The extension of SAS dataset format is like .7 .sas7 bdat. Before moving forward for that creating the data with the input and cards, we need to know that variable is we have to store variable name also. So each variable in SAS dataset consists three attributes. For the any kind of variable, suppose we are taking sex variable. For the sex variable we have three attributes. The name of this sex, like we are also mentioning the sex. So name of that variable sex, the type of variable we can see the character one. You can see from here also. And the third one is the length of this variable. So all thing we will understand with the help of example, like what is this and how we are getting this. So let's understand with an example, like we are creating this data for understanding the data, what is data and what are the data types. What is SAS data understand, we also know. And again we are knowing that what is the variable attributes? So let's understand that the variable attribute also. Let's take an example for the name variable. Suppose we are creating any variable with the name of like RFICDTC. Suppose we are creating this variable. So this variable must consist three things, like the name will be of this anyway of this variable. What is the name of this variable? What is the type of this variable? And what is the length of this variable? So this three important attributes of this any variable. Before creating any data set, we need to know this one. So for that one, we know that the variable attributes is name contain should start from any character letter or any underscore also. The variable name should start from character letter or any underscore. It could be start follow also with the numeric after creating with the variable character or any underscore. The name variable contain name of the variable attribute contain 1 to 32 character. The type of this variable will be numeric or character, and the length of this variable should be if that is numeric, then it must consist 8 byte. If that is the character one, then it must contain it's you can take it as a infinity, but that is in general normally that is 32,767 byte. So this is about that variable, but we don't need to know this much about, because we are not going to create any data. We have to use that one, we have to work on that one. That's why we need to know this only. Okay, now we are moving forward to create the data. So as we in the last lecture we also discussed, like while the creation of data with the using input and card, we have to use that we have to create variable in the inputs statement, and we have to store the observation in the cards statement. So we are storing this the variable name is id, name, age and sex, and the observation we also keep that one. For the id we are giving three inputs, and for the name we are also giving three inputs. Similarly age and sex we are giving three inputs. One thing we need to know that is, like for the character one we need to use dollar symbol always for creating any data set. So this is about to create the data. As I already created in the last lecture, we need to run this one and see that what is data inside we created. Like we can see that id and name, age and sex, as we created the variable name we are already created in the total column you can see. And the observation is 101, 102, 103. That is total three observation we had already stored. That is all we can see in the output data set. Also we have the that showing in the left side column, like we can see that there's a four variable id, name, age and sex, and by the using this symbol also we can easily know that id variable is the numeric type, name variable is the character type, age variable is the numeric type, and sex variable is the character type. That also showing is there. Or else also we can click by clicking there, we can see that this is the this is the variable whose name is name, and the type is character, and the length is 8. So these three things we required for creating any variable. By default it takes 8. Suppose we have to give more than 8 character also later also, then we can also keep that one. We will learn then in the coming forward video. So so let's start our today's session, like various method to create input and methods, inputs and cards. While using input and cards we need to create data set. So first is list input methods. How to create data set with the use of list input methods. This is the data, like we are creating data. For creating the data, we are already noted that, and the exp3 is the data set name, and input, just because we have to store the id variable of that, all variable we want to create that id, name, age and sex, and cards, just because we have to store that variable values. So observation will be like 3, all as already created. So similarly, that we can see that list input method is nothing as we created in the last data set, that is the list input method. So basic concept behind the list input method is what, like in which way I had given the variable in the inputs, the same way we are giving the values of that variable in the cards. This is known as the inputs and cards list input method. Again we having column input methods. Okay, so second is like column input methods, and we will also see that what is the important in the column input methods. Like we can see that as we had mentioned in the input variable in the inputs, the same way we are not mentioning of values of the variable in the cards. That's why we need to give the position of that variable, like that id we are creating in the variable id variable, we need to store that is in the first position, but in the cards we are storing on the 10th position. That's why that is the jumbled way of that variable position, so that we need to give the position of that variable. This is all about the column input methods. So the basic concept behind this column input method is this, like as we had given the variable name in the inputs, we are not storing the values in the cards. For that thing, for sorting that thing, we need to use the position of that particular variable. So we can see that for id variable we have to count the position 1 space, also we need to count 2, then v 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and the starting one is 10, so we have to use 10, 10 11 12, so we have to till 13 we have to use that id. Similarly for the name, similarly for the age, and similarly for the sex we are using. So this is all about that as we mentioned the variable in the inputs, we are not giving the values of in the cards. That's why we need to give the position where that is store the value for that variable. This is about the column. By pressing this, we can see that all the values coming as per the sequence. We can see that id is coming this, and name is coming by this, age is coming by this, and sex is coming by this. Suppose what happen if we are not giving the values. Let's take an example. Let's take an example of that one. If we are not giving that position, then what will happen? We need to see that. Okay, I'm just removing this value just because to see, so for the better understanding of all things, like what will happen if we are not giving the position value. Yeah, this variable is storing at this position, so the value of the variable will be different, coming different, as we can see that all thing is coming with different, like we are storing that this is the numeric data type, but we are getting the character type. So that is the showing the error in that. We can see in the error also, like a statement is not valid or it is used out of proper order, just because we are storing the variable id is the numeric type, but we are not getting at the position of id is of the numeric. That's why we are getting error. So for that correcting that error or suiting that problem, we need to give the position of this one. So this method is known as column input method. This is all about for that. Again we have the formatted input method, and the formatted input method is about, like we similarly we have to create all data in the same way. but having some different in the concept wise, like what is the different in that one. We can see, we already saw that list input method, column input method. Now we are seeing that formatted input method. In formatted input method also we are seeing that the variable value is not at the same position. So for that one we need to use at the rate of the starting position of that. By this way this variable is storing that variable value. So this is about the formatted input method. Like we can see the id value is at this position, so I have to use at the rate 10 position, that is because it started from the 10th position. Similarly for the name one we can use at the rate 2, we just because we are starting the name variable values from the 2 position. Similarly for the age value we are starting from the at the rate 14 position, and for the sex variable we are getting at the first position. Just have to use this at the rate and position of that one variable values. This is for the format of the formatted input method. After running this we can see that we are getting the value of this formatted as per the variable value, id, name, age and sex. This is about that. And the last one is the named input method, like data exp6 we are created that one. Just I'm giving the data a variable directly value, just I'm creating the data directly with the name. Suppose we have to create the name of this one, and again we want to that the area, the location, the email id of this person, like you can say the email id of this one, like I'm storing this email is equal to, I'm storing in that double inverted comma. One thing you need to know that one, that with using named input method for the character data types you need to use always double inverted comma, just because this is the case sensitive value, so I have to keep, we have to keep this in double inverted comma. For the email we can take viku36430 like that, and the all value will be in this side of double inverted comma. Similarly, we are storing this value directly. That's why it's known as the named input method. We are not using input and cards for that, creating the variable and the observation. We are directly stating the variable, and with the is equal to symbol, we are giving the observation of that variable. This is known as the named input method. After running this data set, we can also see that after creating this data, we are getting the value of that. The variable is name, SAS with Vikas, email is that vi36430@gmail. So this, by this way we can create that. What is this all about? Like what is this? I already see what is data, what are the data types, and the what is SAS data also we see. And I suppose we have to create data. So for creating data what we need to know that all thing, as we see that variable we need to create that one, and what variable consists that the variable always consists three attributes, that is name, type and length. What are the name and type and length different for the variable different, we need to know other, we'll see in the upcoming video. So how to create the data and with the using input and cards, we are also seeing that one in this video. We have to focus more on that, what are the various input method we have to create with the using input and cards. So there's a four input method, that is list input method. List input method is nothing, as we had created data in the last lesson, this is the same. Then the column input method is nothing, that we had created variable uh, and the observation, but not as per the sequence in the input, we are not giving the value in the cards. That's why we need to give the location or position of that particular variable values, so have to use that position like this way in the column input methods. Similarly, you can use that formatted input method. We have the data input and the variable. Similarly, we are not getting the variable values at the same position. That's why we need to use the position of that one. But in the formatted one, the signing of that noted down is different, like at the rate 10. That's why we need to use this one. And this is named as no formatted input method. And the last we are getting that named input method. It is totally different from the upper three input method, because if we are not giving any input and cards value for that one, we are just directly creating with the named of that variable and directly giving the variable of that values. Suppose we are giving that mobile number also, suppose we are giving that mobile number, So I'm just giving this mobile number is equal to like for bus at is bus 6 to like this way. So like this way also we are getting that values. You can see that here, and if you run this one you are getting also value that one. That special character is not allowed, that one have to use underscore always. We'll see that all thing in the upcoming video. So we can see that mobile number is coming in this all thing. You can see directly you can create that data set. So this is all about today lesson, and we will move forward. This topic we don't need to know more, just because we don't have to work on the data creation. The data will be already created, you will got, and you have to work on the data. You have to work after data creation. You have to access the data and export the data. Meanwhile this all we have to work that process, that one, that is the our work, that as a statistical programmer. So just have to practice this, note it down in your notebook and keep practice. If there is any issue with you, just comment me on the below section, that I'll surely guide you if there is any issue if you are getting that. Okay, thank you so much.